The sounds between us. The first time I thought something had ruptured inside me. I was at work, filing insurance claims in the back office of Dr. Brennan's dental practice, when I felt it. A wet shift somewhere deep in my abdomen, followed by a sound like someone slowly peeling apart 2 pieces of raw meat. The sound was inside me, inside my head, so close it seemed to originate behind my eyes. I froze, my hand on a manila folder, and listened. Thump. A pause. Then again, thump. Rhythmic, muffled, like a fist wrapped in wet cloth, beating against something soft. The fluorescent lights above me flickered, or seemed to, and the air went thick and wrong. I could taste it suddenly. Copper and salt, the taste of the inside of a cheek bitten bloody. I gripped the filing cabinet. My vision pulsed, darkened at the edges, and for one terrible moment I saw something, a flash, less than a second, of red darkness. Not the red of blood. Darker. The red of light filtered through flesh, through closed eyelids, through skin stretched thin over something that moved. Then it was gone. The lights were normal. The air tasted like nothing. The only sound was the hum of the autoclave down the hall. Dr. Brennan found me sitting on the floor 10 minutes later, my back against the wall, my hands pressed flat to the cold tile. "Lauren, you okay?" "Fine," I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. "Just got dizzy." He gave me that look, the one I was learning to recognize, the one that said, "She's not handling this well." Maybe he was right. I was 6 months pregnant, 6 months of doing this alone, of Phil's number blocked on my phone, of everyone watching me with careful eyes. 6 months of my hand on my belly, feeling the kicks, telling myself I could do this. The kicks were normal, the pregnancy was normal. Dr. Patel said so at every appointment. Healthy heartbeat, good growth, nothing to worry about. So why couldn't I stop worrying? I've always been prone to anxiety. Even as a child, I catastrophized. My mother called it my dark imagination. A therapist in college called it generalized anxiety disorder. When I found out I was pregnant, the anxiety became something else, something with teeth. I read everything: miscarriages, stillbirths, cord accidents, genetic abnormalities. I read forums where women described their losses in graphic detail: the blood, the silence where a heartbeat should be, the terrible moment of knowing. I couldn't stop. Every night I scrolled through horror stories, filling my head with everything that could go wrong. Phil caught me once, at 2 a.m., my face lit by the phone screen. "You need to stop," he said. "You're torturing yourself." He was right. But knowing didn't help. The fear had become a parasite, feeding on my attention, growing larger the more I tried to starve it. When Phil left, the parasite grew teeth. The second episode happened in my car. I was on the connector, stuck in traffic, when the world began to throb. That's the only way I can describe it. The buildings on either side of the highway seemed to pulse, swelling and contracting like organs. The sound of traffic, horns, engines, someone's bass-heavy music became muffled, as if I were hearing it through a membrane, through skin, and underneath it all, that sound, that wet, rhythmic thumping. Closer now. Louder. Like something beating against the walls of a small, enclosed space. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. My vision narrowed to a tunnel, and at the end of the tunnel, I saw darkness, warm, pressing in from all sides, something slick against my face, my arms, filling my mouth with a taste like the inside of a body. A horn blared. I jerked back to reality. The car behind me was inches from my bumper, the driver gesturing angrily. The light had changed. I didn't remember the light. I pulled over, sat on the shoulder with my hazards on. My whole body was shaking. I sat there for 20 minutes before I could drive. That night I made a list: blood pressure changes, blood sugar dehydration stress, lack of sleep. Inner ear problem? I stared at the list for a long time. It looked reasonable, medical, fixable. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something, that the list was a lie I was telling myself, a rational explanation papering over something I didn't want to name. The experiences got worse. At 28 weeks, I started hearing things that weren't there, sounds that seemed to come from inside my own skull, a high-pitched whine at the edge of perception, like a dog whistle tuned to a frequency that only I could hear, a gurgling, like water moving through a pipe, except the pipe was inside me, was made of me, and the water was thick and warm and wrong. Sometimes I heard what sounded like voices, but not voices. Vibrations that might have been words if you slowed them down, played them backward, ran them through equipment that didn't exist. They came from nowhere and everywhere, and when I turned my head to locate them, they disappeared. At 29 weeks, the visions started. Not hallucinations, not exactly. More like intrusions, moments when my vision would glitch and I would see, superimposed over the real world, something else. A flash of red-black darkness, shapes that moved without form. Once, standing in the shower, I looked down at my body and saw, for just a second, my own skin gone translucent, and underneath, a network of veins and vessels pulsing with something that looked almost like light. I blinked. My skin was normal. The water was normal. Everything was fine. Everything was not fine. Anne noticed before I admitted it to myself. We were at brunch, our Saturday ritual, Anne and Christy and me, and I was pushing eggs around my plate when Anne's hand landed on my arm. "Hey, where'd you go?" I looked up. "What?" "You were gone. Like, gone. Staring at nothing for almost 2 minutes." I didn't remember staring at nothing. I didn't remember 2 minutes passing. There was a gap in my mind, a blank space where time should have been. "Sorry," I said. "I didn't sleep well." Christy exchanged a look with Anne. That look. The one I was learning to dread. "Have you thought about talking to someone?" Christy's voice was gentle, professional. She was a social worker. She knew how to handle people who were coming apart. A therapist, someone who specializes in prenatal issues. "I don't need a therapist." "Lauren." Anne's hand was still on my arm, her grip firm. "You're going through a lot. It would be weird if you weren't struggling." I wanted to tell them the truth. I wanted to say, I hear sounds that come from inside my own head. I see things that shouldn't exist. I don't know if I'm losing my mind or if something is actually wrong. But I looked at their faces, concerned, careful, already half convinced that I was falling apart, and I said nothing. "I'll think about it," I said. I didn't think about it. At 30 weeks, I woke at 3 a.m. to a sound like screaming. Not real screaming, not a sound I could hear with my ears. This was deeper, a vibration that seemed to resonate in my bones, in my teeth, in the soft tissue of my brain. A high, thin wail of something in distress, coming from everywhere and nowhere. I lay in the dark, frozen, my heart pounding, and in my head, that sound. A scream with no voice, a terror with no source. I don't know how long it lasted, minutes, hours. Time had stopped meaning anything. When it finally faded, I was soaked in sweat, my throat raw, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't hold a glass of water. I lay there until dawn, afraid to move, afraid to sleep, listening to silence. I started keeping a journal, not of what I experienced. I couldn't bring myself to write that down, but of when. Date, time, duration, severity. I was looking for a pattern, something that would explain it, let me point to a cause and say, this is why. After 2 weeks, I had nothing. The experiences came when I was rested and when I was exhausted, when I was anxious and when I was calm. There was no trigger I could find, no variable I could control. I took online screening tests for schizophrenia. The results were always inconclusive. I thought about telling Dr. Patel. I thought about seeing a psychiatrist. But every time I got close, I imagined what would happen next. The questions, the concern, the possibility that they would decide I was unfit. So I stayed quiet. I wrote in my journal. I told myself it would pass. The worst episode happened at 32 weeks. I was in the grocery store, standing in the produce section, when reality tore. There was no other word for it. One moment I was looking at avocados. The next, the world had split open and something else was bleeding through. The lights went red. Not flickering. Red, the color of blood seen through closed eyelids, the color of light filtered through living tissue. The sounds of the store, music, cartwheels, voices, became muffled, distorted, like hearing a conversation from underwater, from inside a body. And then I was somewhere else. Darkness, total darkness, warm and wet and pressing in from every side. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Something was wrapped around me, holding me, constricting with slow muscular patience. I could feel walls, not walls, tissue, contracting in waves, squeezing me toward something I couldn't see. I heard a sound, massive, thunderous, a rhythmic pounding that seemed to shake my entire body, to vibrate through my bones, to fill every space inside me until there was room for nothing else. I felt fear wash through me, pure animal panic, the terror of something trapped, something being compressed, something that couldn't escape. It overwhelmed me, flooding my body with adrenaline, making my heart race, making me want to scream. Someone was touching my shoulder. "Ma'am? Ma'am, are you okay?" I was on the floor, on my back, staring up at fluorescent lights, a woman's worried face hovering over me. My throat was raw. Had I been screaming? "I'm fine," I said. My voice didn't sound fine. "I'm pregnant, I just got dizzy." They helped me up. They gave me water. They asked if I needed an ambulance. I drove home with both hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, and I didn't go back to the grocery store again. That night, alone in my living room, I made myself think about what I was experiencing. I could explain it. Stress, anxiety, pregnancy hormones. My brain, overwhelmed by the pressure of doing this alone, was misfiring, creating sensations that weren't real, interpreting normal stimuli as something sinister. That was the rational explanation, the one that made sense. But there was another thought, one I couldn't quite look at directly. What if I wasn't generating these experiences? What if I was receiving them? I didn't let myself think about where they might be coming from. That way lay madness. My mother came to visit at 34 weeks. She rearranged the nursery, stocked my freezer with casseroles, and asked about Phil with a persistence that made me want to scream. "A child needs a father," she said one evening, apropos of nothing. We were sitting in the living room, her knitting needles clicking in that rhythm I remembered from childhood. "Mom, stop." "I'm just saying. I know what you're saying." She pursed her lips and was quiet for a moment. Then she set down her knitting and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Concern, yes, but something else too. Recognition. "You remind me of how you were in high school," she said quietly. "Junior year, do you remember?" I remembered. The panic attacks that came out of nowhere, in class, at the mall, once in the middle of a movie theater. The racing heart, the tunnel vision, the certainty that I was dying. 6 months of therapy, breathing exercises, coping strategies. "That was different," I said. "Was it?" She picked up her knitting again, but her eyes stayed on me. "You have that same look, that same distance, like you're fighting something nobody else can see." I didn't answer. "The breathing exercises," she continued, "the grounding techniques. Dr. Morrison taught you all those skills for a reason, Lauren. They helped you then. They might help you now." "I'm not having panic attacks, Mom." "Maybe not. But you're struggling with something. I can see it." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Whatever it is, you don't have to fight it alone. The skills you learned, they're still there. Use them. Count backwards from 10. Name 5 things you can see. Breathe in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. You remember." I remembered. I'd used those techniques 1,000 times as a teenager, clutching them like a lifeline while the world tilted around me. "I'll try," I said. That night, lying in bed, I tried the breathing exercise. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. The sounds didn't stop. The visions didn't stop, but for a few minutes I felt less alone with them. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Later, I heard her on the phone with my sister. Her voice was low, but I caught enough. Seems so disconnected, like she's not really here. Reminds me of junior year when she had all those panic attacks. I think the stress is getting to her. I stood in the hallway listening, and I thought, if only it were that simple. Tina, my midwife, came for a home visit at 35 weeks. "You seem tense," she said. "More than last time." "I haven't been sleeping well." "Tell me about that." I hesitated. Tina had kind eyes, a calm voice. She'd been doing this for 20 years. Maybe she'd heard worse. "Bad dreams," I said finally. "Every night for the past 2 weeks, sometimes 2 or 3 times a night." Tina nodded, her expression neutral. "What kind of dreams?" "I don't know how to describe them. Dark, claustrophobic. I feel like I'm trapped somewhere small and tight, and I can't get out. I can't breathe. There's this pressure, this squeezing, and sounds that don't make sense." "What kind of sounds?" "Thumping, gurgling, sometimes like voices but not voices, like hearing something through a wall, through water." I laughed, but it came out wrong. "I know how that sounds." "It sounds exhausting," Tina said simply. 2 weeks of that, night after night. No wonder you're struggling." "The thing is, they don't feel like regular dreams. They feel," I searched for the word, "real. Like I'm actually somewhere else. Like I'm experiencing something that's actually happening, just not to me." Tina was quiet for a moment. "Pregnancy can do strange things to the mind," she said finally. "The hormones, the stress, the physical changes, it all adds up. Vivid dreams, even disturbing ones, aren't uncommon. The fact that they feel real doesn't mean they are." "I know. But I want you to take this seriously. Sleep deprivation can be dangerous, especially this close to delivery. Have you tried anything to help?" "My mother taught me some breathing exercises. They help a little." "Good. Keep using them, and try to rest during the day when you can. Even if you can't sleep, just lying down with your eyes closed can help." She paused. "If it gets worse, if you start having these experiences while you're awake, I want you to call me. Or Dr. Patel. Promise me." I nodded. I didn't tell her about the grocery store. I didn't tell her that the waking hours were worse than the dreams. "Everything looks good physically," she said, her hands on my belly. "Baby's active, healthy. You're doing great." I smiled. I nodded. I didn't feel great. Anne came over 2 days before my due date. She showed up with decaf coffee and a nervous energy I hadn't seen in her before. We sat on my couch, and she kept fidgeting with her cup, not quite meeting my eyes. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I've never told anyone, not even Christy." I waited. "When I was pregnant with Maya—" She stopped. Started again. "I had these experiences. I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't tell anyone because I was afraid they'd think I was crazy, or that something was wrong with the baby, or that I wasn't fit to be a mother." "What kind of experiences?" Anne set down her coffee. Her hands were shaking slightly. "It started around 6 months. I would see things, flashes of darkness, like the world was flickering, and hear things. This sound like something wet, something rhythmic, like being inside a body, hearing it work." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I know how insane that sounds." "It doesn't sound insane," I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked. "You too?" I nodded. Anne let out a breath, something between a laugh and a sob. "Oh God, I thought I was the only one. I thought—" She pressed her hand to her mouth, composing herself. "It was the most stressful time of my life. I couldn't tell anyone what was happening. I couldn't explain it. I just had to endure it. Day after day, these intrusions, these moments where reality seemed to slip and something else bled through." "How bad did it get?" "Bad. By the end, I was barely sleeping. I was afraid to go out in public because I never knew when it would happen. I had an episode in the middle of my baby shower, just froze, staring at nothing while everyone watched. They thought I was having some kind of breakdown." She shook her head. Maybe I was. What happened when Maya was born? Anne was quiet for a moment. It didn't stop right away. I remember being in the hospital, holding her, waiting for the next episode to hit. But it didn't come, and the next day, still nothing, and the day after that. It just stopped? Not all at once. It faded, like turning down the volume on a radio. The first week was still rough. I kept expecting it to come back. But by the time I went in for my postpartum checkup 6 weeks later, it was completely gone. Dr. Reyes asked how I was feeling, and I realized I hadn't had an episode in over a month. It was just over. And it never came back? Never. Not once. It was like it had never happened at all. Anne picked up her coffee again, wrapped her hands around it. I convinced myself it was stress, pregnancy hormones, some weird neurological thing that resolved itself after delivery. I buried it. I didn't want to think about it, didn't want to remember it, and then I started acting the way you did. She nodded. I recognized it. The way you zone out, the way you flinch at nothing, the way you seem like you're fighting something invisible. She reached over and took my hand. I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry. I was afraid that if I talked about it, it would come back. And Maya's normal? I asked. She's okay? Completely normal. Completely healthy. Whatever I went through, it didn't affect her at all. She's 7 now and she's perfect. Smart, funny, no issues whatsoever. Anne squeezed my hand. Whatever this is, Lauren, it ends. It doesn't last forever. You just have to get through it. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was temporary, that it would fade after the birth, that in 6 weeks I would be sitting in Dr. Patel's office feeling completely normal. But I couldn't shake the question that Anne's story raised. If 2 of us had experienced the same thing, it wasn't just stress. It wasn't just hormones. It was something real. But what? I went into labor on a Thursday morning, 37 weeks, early. The contractions woke me before dawn, and as I lay there timing them, I realized something. The sounds had stopped. The visions had stopped. For the first time in months, my head was quiet. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt empty, like something had been there, and now it was gone. The labor was long, 12 hours. The baby was breech, stubbornly refusing to turn, and eventually Dr. Patel recommended a cesarean. Her heart rate is irregular, she said. We need to get her out now. They wheeled me to the OR. The anesthesiologist told me to count backward from 10. At 7, I felt something, a brush against my consciousness, light and strange and fleeting. Then darkness. I woke up in recovery. Anne was beside me, her face pale. Where is she? She's perfect, Anne said. They're bringing her now. They placed her in my arms. My daughter. Pink and wrinkled, her eyes squeezed shut, so impossibly small. I held her. I waited for something, a return of the sounds, the visions, some confirmation of what I had experienced. Nothing. Just silence, just a baby. I named her Emma. The first week was a blur, feeding, sleeping, the endless cycle of caring for something so small and so dependent. Emma was calm. Everyone said so. She rarely cried. She slept for long stretches. When she was awake, she seemed alert, her dark eyes tracking movement the way newborns do. Normal, completely normal. I watched her constantly, looking for something. I didn't know what. Some sign, some explanation. There was nothing to find. She was just a baby. Anne came to visit on my 3rd day home. She held Emma, cooed at her, said all the right things. And then she paused, a strange expression crossing her face. What is it? I asked. Nothing. She shook her head. Nothing. Never mind. She handed Emma back a few minutes later and made an excuse to leave early. She hasn't been back since. 3 weeks now. Emma sleeps and eats and grows. And I've started to wonder if everything I experienced was just me. Just my anxiety, my fear, my broken brain creating experiences that felt real but weren't. A temporary psychosis that ended when the pregnancy did. It would explain everything. It would be a relief. I almost believe it. Last night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened, the sounds, the visions, the way they started at 6 months and intensified as the pregnancy progressed, the way they stopped, completely suddenly, the moment I went into labor. If it was just stress, just hormones, just my brain misfiring, why did it stop so abruptly? Why did Anne experience the same thing? Why did it feel so much like receiving rather than generating? And I let myself think the thing I'd been avoiding. What if it wasn't me? What if somehow it was her? I got out of bed. I went to the nursery. Emma was awake, lying in her crib, her eyes open in the darkness, not fussing, not crying, just lying there, the way babies do. I stood in the doorway watching her, and I thought, not out loud, just in my head, was it you? Were you somehow showing me those things? Was I feeling what you felt? Silence. Of course, silence. She was 3 weeks old. She couldn't understand questions. She couldn't understand anything. I walked closer to the crib, looked down at her. She was so small, so ordinary. Pink skin, tiny fingers, the soft rhythm of breath. Just a baby. I need to know, I thought. I need to know if it was real or if I imagined everything. I need to know if there's something wrong with me or if you're... Emma's head turned. Not a twitch, not a random movement. Her head turned toward me, slow and smooth, with a control that newborns don't have. Her eyes found mine, and she stared. I've seen my daughter look at me before, the unfocused gaze of a newborn, eyes wandering, attention drifting. This was different. This was fixed. Her dark eyes locked onto mine and didn't move, didn't waver, didn't blink. She stared at me the way something stares at prey, the way something stares when it's been waiting, and finally, you've come close enough. The room felt colder, the shadows in the corners seemed deeper, and my daughter, my tiny, helpless 3-week-old daughter, held my gaze with an intensity that made my breath stop in my throat. I couldn't look away. I couldn't move. And then she smiled. It started slow. Too slow. Her lips pulling back, her cheeks rising, the expression spreading across her face like something unfolding. It was a smile, technically. It had all the right shapes. But there was nothing behind it. No warmth, no joy, no infant reflex. Just movement, just muscle and intention. The smile widened, and widened, just a fraction too far, just a degree beyond what looked natural. And her eyes never changed. Her eyes stayed fixed on mine, flat and dark and old, so much older than 3 weeks, older than 3 years, older than anything that should live inside a baby's skull. I heard my own heartbeat. I heard my breath, shallow and fast. I heard the house settling around us. And then I heard something else. It came from inside my head, from the place where my own thoughts lived, where my own voice spoke. But this wasn't my voice. This was something else, something that had crawled into that space and was using it, speaking through it, wearing it like a mask. The voice was wet. That's the only way I can describe it. Wet and thick, like words being pushed through something soft and rotten. It was low and high at the same time, layered, as if multiple voices were speaking in almost unison, sliding against each other like whispers in a crowd. And underneath the words, I heard something else. A sound like breathing, but wrong, too slow, too deep. The breathing of something very large, very patient, very close. Yes, one word, stretched out, vibrating in my skull like a tuning fork struck against bone. Yes! The smile on Emma's face held for one more second, that too wide, too empty smile. Those flat, staring eyes. Then it was gone. Her face went slack, her eyes unfocused, drifted, became the eyes of a newborn again. She yawned, a tiny, ordinary yawn, and her gaze wandered to the ceiling, to the mobile above her crib, to nothing in particular. Just a baby, just my baby. lying in her crib, tired and small and completely, utterly normal, as if nothing had happened. I stood there, shaking so hard I had to grip the edge of the crib to stay upright. My heart was slamming against my ribs. My skin was slick with cold sweat. I imagined it, I told myself. I'm exhausted. I'm not sleeping. I'm still recovering from the pregnancy, from the birth, from everything. I imagined it, but I could still feel the echo of that voice in my skull, that wet, layered, wrong voice, the word that answered a question I had only thought. I reached down. My hands were trembling. I picked her up. She was warm. She was soft. She weighed almost nothing. She smelled like milk and powder and baby shampoo. She felt like any newborn. Fragile, helpless, completely dependent on me. She made a small sound, a little coo, and nestled against my chest. Just a baby. "What are you?" I whispered. She didn't respond. Her eyes were closed now, her breathing evening out into sleep. Her tiny hand curled against my shirt. Just a baby. A normal baby. My baby. I held her for a long time in the dark. I told myself I had imagined it. I told myself I was tired, stressed, maybe still a little crazy from everything I'd been through. I almost believed it. I don't sleep much anymore. I watch her instead. I watch her sleep, watch her eat, watch the way her eyes move when she's awake. Most of the time, she's just a baby, fussing, feeding, needing me in all the ordinary ways, but sometimes I catch myself waiting, watching for that stare to return, for that smile, for that voice to slither back into my head and speak again. It hasn't happened. Not since that night. Maybe it never happened at all. Maybe I'm just a tired, traumatized woman projecting my fears onto an innocent child. Maybe. This morning I was feeding her in the nursery. Early light through the curtains, the house quiet. I was thinking about the future, about what it will be like when she's older, when she can talk. I was wondering if I'll ever know for certain what happened to me during those months, whether it was real or imagined, whether it came from her or from my own breaking mind. I was thinking, will I ever understand? Will you ever be able to tell me what you are? Emma stopped nursing. She pulled back. She looked up at me. And for just a moment, a fraction of a second, I saw it again. That focus, that intensity, those eyes that were too still, too fixed, too aware. Then she blinked, and she was just a baby again, and she started nursing, and the moment passed. But I felt it. Just before she looked away, a whisper of pressure in my skull, a vibration in the dark space behind my thoughts. 3 words. Faint. Barely there. Like hearing someone speak from the bottom of a well, from the other side of a wall, from somewhere very deep and very far away. When I'm ready. I held my breath. I waited for more. Nothing. Just silence. Just my daughter, nursing peacefully, her eyes closed, her face soft and innocent and blank. I sat there for a long time, holding her, feeling her warmth against my skin. I don't know what my daughter is. I don't know if she's anything other than what she appears to be, a healthy, normal baby girl. I don't know if the things I hear are real or if they're symptoms of something broken in my brain. I don't know if I'm losing my mind. I don't know if I need help. I only know that sometimes when I look at my daughter, I see just a baby. And sometimes, rarely, briefly, I see something else looking back. Something patient. Something waiting. And I don't know which is real. I keep a journal now. I write down the moments that feel wrong. The stares, the smiles, the whispers I think I hear. There aren't many entries. Most days, Emma is just Emma. But the journal is getting thicker. And sometimes, late at night when I'm writing in it, I feel that pressure building behind my eyes again. That sense of something leaning close, peering over my shoulder, reading what I write. I look up. Emma is asleep in her crib, across the room. Just a baby, breathing softly, perfectly still. I watch her for a long time. I wait for her to move, to turn, to open her eyes and look at me with that terrible knowing stare. She doesn't. She just sleeps. I tell myself I'm imagining things. I tell myself I'm tired. I tell myself there's nothing wrong with my daughter, nothing wrong with me, nothing to be afraid of. I almost believe it. But I keep the journal anyway. I write everything down, because someday she'll be ready. And when that day comes, I want to remember. I want to have proof, for myself, if no one else, that I wasn't crazy, that I saw what I saw, that I heard what I heard, that something looked out at me from behind my daughter's eyes and smiled.